Benjamin Franklin once said, there are three things extremely hard: steal, a diamond, and to know oneself. And being aware and connecting with ourselves is important before we even try to connect with others. So today we're going to talk about ADHD. I believe it's not a disability, it's a different ability. And people excel at different things, including people with ADHD. And often people with ADHD shine at creative thinking. In researching this podcast, I was reading about a 2017 study in the Journal of Attention Disorders led by Natal Boot, focused on creativity in adults with ADHD. And during goal-focused tasks, these adults often generated more unique ideas than others in the study. This connects to what some people with ADHD share about their experiences. They may notice stronger creative abilities and in areas like art, problem solving, and innovative thinking. When tasks match their natural thinking styles, people often spot their differences more easily. I read, different is not bad. In fact, it can be incredibly good. Apple Computers was different. Tesla Motors was different. Amazon and Facebook were too. We have creative, rule-breaking innovators to thank for some huge leaps in the human experience. As a teacher, I was very aware and we're taught about the different learning styles. And I wonder, and we'll discuss today, whether ADHD is just a newly identified ability. My guest today is Caroline Beresford. Oops, I haven't put that bit in there, so I'll have to record that later. I think stop. Actually, I think I'm looking at.
Are you looking at the one that I didn't send back?
Yeah, so I need
Sorry,
to
but
find.
I did send. Hang on. Oh, okay.
I'm not looking at
start
them.
again.
Yeah, I've just got to find it. Hang on, sorry.
You need me to resend it to you?
No, it'll pop up in a minute, so not a problem. My guest today is Caroline. Oh no, sorry. Every person can contribute in their own way. Every person can contribute in their own way. My guest today is Caroline Beresford, ADHD coach, advocate, and founder of the Advocacy Project, TAP. Caroline is an ADHD coach and consultant, advocate, and founder. Caroline Beresford is an ADHD coach and consultant, advocate, and founder of the Advocacy Project, TAP, a platform dedicated to helping individuals, professionals, and students understand and harness the strengths of their ADHD. With a background in business and over 13 years in the pharmaceutical industry, specialising in the central nervous system and mental health, Caroline combines scientific knowledge with lived experience to create practical, evidence-based strategies for thriving with ADHD. Her journey into ADHD coaching began in 2019 when her son was diagnosed. Like many parents, she immersed herself in learning how to best support him. What she didn't expect was to see her own experience reflected back at her. A late ADHD diagnosis reframed her entire life and set her on a mission to empower others with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to work with their unique brain wiring rather than pushing it away. We connected in a business network for women entrepreneurs, and it's been a pleasure to get to know her. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Kerryn. Thank you so much for having me as a guest today.
It's great to have the opportunity to learn more about ADHD and your experience and to be able to share, because it is a term that seems to be used a lot recently, and I have friends of all ages who have been diagnosed. So looking at your own pathway and speaking to my clients, I'm always intrigued on the journey of where we all started. When
Mhm.
you look back and connect your dots, where did your work life start and what's been the steps along the way that has put you to where you are today?
Okay. Well, my work life actually started straight out of university. I didn't have any time off, so I went straight from school into an applied science degree and studied applied science for 2 years, and realised that it wasn't really my thing, just pure science. So I combined that with business. So I graduated with a bachelor degree in business with a major in human resource management. So it gave me a really great uh, opportunity, I think, looking back, to really sort of look at lots of different roles. And I was really lucky to score a great role with Pfizer, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, in sales and marketing. I started working in their central nervous system division, which was my first introduction into the mental health space. So for Pfizer, I was looking after a portfolio that included some anti-anxiety medications, some antidepressant, panic disorder medications, and also some Alzheimer's disease products as well. So it was my first introduction into that space from a science point of view, and it was the beginning of a passion that grew for me, something that's dear to my heart.
And
Um,
after the birth of your boys, you had a radical career move. Tell us about that.
I did, yes. So with the pharmaceutical role and the different roles I had in that space, there was a lot of overseas travel involved, and I do love travel, but when you've got two young children at home, it makes things quite tough. So I, with the support of my husband, decided to chase another little passion of mine, which was all things beautifully designed. So I'd always really loved being in beautiful spaces, and I always worked best when I was in spaces that had been designed beautifully and that were neat and tidy. So I thought, let's give interior design a crack. So I studied a diploma in interior design and decoration, and was lucky enough to have the support of not only my husband, but from different contacts I had in the sort of the food industry. So I ended up launching my own studio and ran that for just over 10 years, actually. So yeah, a complete 360, and quite ADHD of me, I guess, looking back. Not that I knew that, the way my brain was wired then, but it sort of all makes sense now.
Sure. And then, of course, we had the COVID epidemic, and that threw a spanner in the works for many people. And I think you went off in another direction at that stage.
Yes, I think the word pivot was the most coined word of that time. I'm sure everyone would agree with me. Yes, so there was a lot going on for us at that time anyway. Because my design studio was really focusing and like sort of centered around that hospitality and retail space. As soon as COVID reached our shores, I lost a lot of my business, which was quite frightening at the time. But there was other things going on in our family as well, which sort of, looking back now, it makes sense why everything happened the way it did. I like to be quite philosophical at times and try and find a silver lining wherever I can. And this is a beautiful example of that, actually. My son had, he'd had a bit of a tricky time at school, and I think we're going to talk about that next. So yeah.
Sure, sure. So we'll get on to ADHD now because we don't, we've got lots to share about that too. But I think looking back and seeing how our life unfolds is always interesting because it is a journey and it is an evolution. So, how do you define ADHD? And it seems, as I said, that it's a label that's used a lot nowadays.
Yes, look, I like to define ADHD, the ADHD brain that is interest driven. So it's a brain that is interest driven rather than focusing on the more negative view of it being a deficit based condition. The actual acronym stands for attention hyperactivity. Oh my God, sorry. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Hmm?
But that to me, I mean, when I sort of moved across into studying coaching, that was one of the first things that the ADD Coach Academy taught us was that it's really important to reframe ADHD as it's not always meaning that, we're less intelligent or we're broken. It's just that our brains are interest driven. And, in some instances, that can be a real bonus.
Absolutely, and that's why this episode is actually entitled "Different Isn't Bad."
Yes.
So, so you said that things were a little bit difficult with your son. Why did you decide to have your son assessed to better understand his behaviour?
So yes, look, he really, I think week 3 of kindy, one of the teachers actually his kindy teacher said, there's something going on here. We need to sort of look into some of the behavioural stuff because he was just really struggling to settle he was being really disruptive in class and just couldn't sit still. So there were lots of, red flags going on there. I'm super proactive. So as soon as that red flag was raised to me, I just, put everything aside and said, right, we've got to sort of get to the bottom of this. So I got him in to see a paediatrician like really quickly. I don't know how I did it now looking back, but I think within a week I had found a great paediatrician through, actually it was through my old pharmaceutical days. It's funny how, you keep in touch with people and you keep your network alive. I just reached out to someone and they said, look, let me help. So that was great. But that first initial assessment came back sub-threshold ADHD, which means that, yes, there are markers there, but because he was so little, he was only 5, that particular paediatrician didn't want to go down the path of medication or a formal diagnosis, actually, which, look, in hindsight, it would have made it would have made the road a lot less bumpy for us as a family and for my son himself. But that's the way it went. So he had a great teacher in year 1 and year 2, but then the wheels sort of started falling off again in the later years of primary school. And it wasn't until we actually withdrew him from that particular school environment and put him into a fresh environment where, with fresh eyes. And we were then able to get a proper formal diagnosis of ADHD hyperactive subtype. And that was after the sub-threshold diagnosis and a generalised anxiety disorder misdiagnosis from a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So it took us about almost 6 years to get to the bottom of exactly what was going on. Yeah. And so in that time, I mean, it was the perfect storm, really. There was all of that going on. And then COVID happened and all of my big projects sort of were blown out of the water. So I had lots of time up my hands, and that's where I found this incredible thing called ADHD coaching. And here I am today. Like, that's almost 4 or 5 years later.
sort of serendipity, isn't it?
It
Firstly,
is.
before we continue, I really want to thank you for sharing your story today, because it, has a lot of personal components to it, but it's, important for people perhaps who are experiencing the same thing to understand that they're not alone, and that there are other
Yeah.
people that have gone through the same thing, and maybe what you have to offer will just give them a glimmer of hope or some steps to go through. So how useful do you think that formal diagnosis was?
Oh, look, really, it was life-changing for him, and for us. Actually, just before I go into that, I did want to acknowledge and mention that my son has given me permission to talk about this, even though, I'm not using his name or anything. He has given me permission to talk about this, and has done all the way through, really, like as soon as he was old enough for me to have that conversation with him. He feels really, really strongly about changing the way ADHD is perceived in the community. And I'm so proud of him. He actually came home from boarding school on the weekend, last weekend, and he's announced that he's studying psychology, actually, as part of his final, year 11 and 12. And he has been talking about this for a little while, but he said, Mum, I just love psychology is my favourite subject, even more than maths. And I really think that I'm going to aim to go to university to study child psychology.
That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
that's why I want to have this conversation too, because I just, as I see, different is not bad. And, that we shouldn't be labeling things. We should be trying to understand them, and therefore be able to understand why people tick, and
Yeah.
understand ourselves. So I'm
Yes.
delighted to hear that he's going to be able, what a great psychologist he'll be.
And he
um,
would he just would be so good. I mean, he's always been really beautiful and gentle with small children and animals. It's amazing, actually. He came home from school. This is actually a bit of a woo-woo story, but it's a nice one to tell. He's always had an affinity with animals. Like, little birds will just come and like sit next to him, and he'll let insects and spiders crawl on his hands and things. And he actually went away to school this year for the first time, to a different state, and he came back for the weekend. And a little owl that he used to see when he was still at school here, he would see it walking home from sports training or something of an evening. It would sit outside on the electrical lines. And I was woken up early on Saturday morning. We picked him up from the airport on Friday night late, and so he was asleep in bed. And I woke up to this hoot, 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 and I thought, my goodness, what's that? And I went outside, and it was the owl that I hadn't seen since he'd left to go to school. So I went and woke him up, and it was just the most gorgeous moment. So you can't tell me that that's more than just coincidence. Like,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, really lovely story. Thank you for sharing.
Sorry, a bit of a tangent there, very ADHD.
No, but it's interesting, and actually they do say that, going in another tangent, that magpies that swoop will remember that you've walked past them, and they will attack you.
Yeah.
So there are things we don't understand, and just because we don't understand them doesn't mean they're any less real. So
Yeah.
yeah. So what have you noticed about your management of ADHD in your family, now that you have a better understanding
Yes.
about, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I've always really encouraged our family to be really open. ADHDers are generally curious by nature anyway. So as a family, we have always talked very openly about ADHD and different brain wiring, and what it means to be on the autism spectrum, for example, and embrace the positives, and not get bogged down in the label as such.
Right.
I just feel like at the moment, everyone these days is actually being like shuffled into some sort of label. Going back to your question on the formal diagnosis, was it useful? Yes, it was. Is it a label? Yes, but for where he was in his life, I think it was really important because of the struggles that he had had and the misdiagnoses. So to get that clarity for us as a family, it was, I think it was the biggest change, because getting that diagnosis then, of course, enabled us to explore whether we were going to trial medication with him as well.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I got distracted with the phone there because I hate it when it rings. I should have had it turned off. I think the labeling is not helpful. I agree with you, and I encourage people to be curious. I think it's a good skill to have, and understanding that we're different is good. Sorry, I've lost my track of thought there, but I'll edit it.
So going back to what we were, yes, I was saying that we embrace the positives. We talk really openly as a family, and we acknowledge the challenges. Look, I've taught, because there's a couple of us in our family that are neurodivergent. I've been very clear with the fact, and I talk about this with all of my clients too, especially my students. Our brain wiring is not an excuse for poor behaviour or bad decisions or anything like that. We need to own the way we carry ourselves in life.
Yes.
It can make life a little bit more challenging, but it's up to us to learn how our brain works, to understand how other people might be being challenged as well by ADHD, and to learn the skills and the tools to be able to work with our executive dysfunction so we can manage through life better.
Absolutely. I'm just going to shut the door. Hang on. So who did you take your son to for a diagnosis?
So I took him to a pediatrician. Yeah. So there's different ways. There's a couple of different avenues you can take for children. Essentially, you've got the option of taking them to a child and adolescent psychologist or a developmental pediatrician or a general pediatrician. It's really, I can't recommend enough how important it is to find someone who has experience in diagnosing ADHD, because it's actually quite frightening. I've heard of instances very recently of where, doctors have actually referred to ADHD as being an excuse for bad behaviour. That's still actually happening. So it's really important to find someone that is trained and has an interest and actually wants to help families that are living with ADHD. If you're an adult and you're questioning some ADHD traits that you might be experiencing in your life, you can either be diagnosed by a psychologist that has a interest in ADHD, or a adult psychiatrist. Again, you need to be going to someone that has an interest or specialty in ADHD, because you end up being questioned. If you are interested in going down the medication path, my advice is to go direct to a doctor that can prescribe. So that only includes a pediatrician or a psychiatrist.
Right. So how does your work as a coach differ from those professionals? Obviously, you don't have a medical degree, but how is it different?
My My role is different in it's a support role. It's a practical, hands-on support role that sits alongside pharmacological therapies, for example, which is the stimulant and non-stimulant medications, cognitive behaviour therapy, which is provided by a psychologist, and then you have coaching, which is different to therapy. It is all about helping the client understand how their brain's working, understand what ADHD actually means, what's going on at a neurological level, what's executive function, what does that mean, and what specific executive skills for them are being impacted by their brain wiring, and then how can the client and I work together to help them explore the tools and strategies to help them move forward to work with the executive function that they've got. So those sorts of the things that I work with my clients on are, not only strategies and tools like time management and learning skills around being able to better self-regulate, but we also look at the non-pharmacological things that they can do in their life to support their brain function or the dopamine production, which is everything around sleep, diet, exercise, and mindfulness and meditation.
And do you have a particular age group that you work with?
I have worked with all age groups. I did spend a little bit of time consulting to the Child Development Clinic in Sydney, which was a beautiful experience. I was there for 6 months and I got the opportunity there to work with a lot of younger children. Like, I think my youngest that I worked with there was 5 or 6. But working with families and family units and working on big family strategy, because when a family member is diagnosed with ADHD, the entire family is impacted. It's not just, the one person, and especially when you're parenting a child with ADHD. And quite often, because ADHD is so, it's very hereditary, quite often you'll have a number of, you'll have the ADHD child, but then the parent often finds out that they have ADHD as well, which is what happened in our family.
Right. So what top 5 things would you recommend for people to do if they're thinking they or a family member might benefit from an assessment? What would the process be?
I guess the first 5 steps would be try and find someone to get some advice from someone that's well-versed and connected in the ADHD professional world. So that could be your local family GP. If you have a family GP, which I do, I'm huge on having a family GP, because if you've got a family GP, then they have known you over a long period of time, and so then you're able to get that longitudinal data or evidence of your executive skills or your executive dysfunction. But yeah, so go to a GP. If you don't have a family GP, a GP that someone hopefully can recommend to you. And then after that, you would ask for a referral to either a paediatrician if it's for a child, or a referral to a psychiatrist if it's anyone over the age of 18 and above. That's if you're wanting to trial medication. If you're not interested in medication and you're wanting to, you're happy to go to a psychologist, you can go through the diagnosis with a psychologist. Next step is, as I mentioned before, it's great to try and get that longitudinal evidence or data of how life has been for you. So when I was going for my diagnosis, my mum sent up all of my old school reports. And it was, I had I had lots of friends saying to me, "You ADHD, you're really organized. You don't look like you would have ADHD." It's like, it comes at a cost, trust me. But it was funny. My psychiatrist took one look at all of my school reports, and it was just quintessential inattentive ADHD. Caroline is not working to her potential. Caroline is a perfectionist. She strives to do really well, but she's often distracted and talking to her friends or daydreaming out the window. That's just, yeah. So the longitudinal evidence and data is really helpful. Go onto a waiting list ASAP, because I think Australia-wide, the waiting lists here are ridiculous. We're talking up to like 9 months, 12 months. So, and again, you know, that's something that I like to try and help people with as well. If you are wanting to explore a formal diagnosis, there are good coaches that have done the training and that are accredited and that are members of the Australian ADHD Professionals Association, ADPA, which I'm a member of. We have a huge network of professionals, including paediatricians, psychiatrists, psychologists. We've got, you know, pharmacists that have got a strong interest in ADHD, and, you know, so there's a huge network Australia-wide, and we are in contact often at conferences. And so if anyone is looking for some assistance with that, I mean, that's another one of the roles that I take really seriously as a coach, is actually supporting people. So not only coaching, but supporting them on their ADHD journey, wherever they might be on it.
Right. So I know that you're based in Sydney, but how do you work with your clients? Do they need to be Sydney based?
No, look, so I do see people face to face if they would like that. Not many coaches do that anymore, I don't think, but I do. I think that in person you miss a lot of the connection, you know, your facial expressions and body language, which is a big part of how someone is feeling. So I do see people face to face, although, you know, I've got my small group coaching series that I run once a quarter. We've got the next one starting next week, actually. That's a small group of 8 people, and it runs for 6 weeks. I've got 2 people from Canada, a person from Chicago, and someone from Perth joining. So, yeah, I've got people from all over the world that have experienced my coaching and found it helpful. So you don't have to be in Sydney to work with me.
Isn't it amazing the world has opened up since COVID, I think, and we've become much more connected in some ways and disconnected in others. So how would people connect with you, Caroline?
So people can connect with me on my website. Will you pop that in the show notes? Or?
Yes, I will, but it's you can just say it as well.
Sure. So it's theadvocacyproject.com, and that's advocacy with a double D. So THEADDVOCACY project.com. You can also send me an email at caroline@theadvocacyproject.com. How else can you can look me up on LinkedIn, which is Caroline Beresford. I'm also on Instagram. I'm not there often though, because it's not really my thing. It's okay, but I'd rather hang out on LinkedIn. That's where most of my people hang. And yeah.
Great.
Different ways.
And what impact do you think that your work has?
I think the work that I've done so far has given people hope. It's helped people understand themselves a lot more. It's helped people foster some self-compassion, and it's actually helped people connect and to foster some empathy for others. And maybe, I think it's helped people understand that we're all different in some way, and rather than, plopping a label on them, which is what we seem to be doing these days, the more we talk and the more we connect openly and freely, the better we're going to understand each other and be more empathetic, which will make the world a happier place, I think.
Yes, that's what I believe too. And I think we need to connect with ourselves, and then we need to understand other people, that we're not all the same. And sometimes our behaviour can affect other people. But if we have some understanding, then that can be a very valuable thing, I believe.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
So, on a lighter note, if you were to come to one of my events, and we use the conversation starter cards, which help us get to know each other on a deeper level, you might draw the card, what does success look like to you?
Mm-hmm.
What's your response?
What does success look like to me? That's really interesting that that you've asked me that question, because this comes up a lot in many of my coaching sessions. It did actually, it's come up about 2 or 3 times this week. What does success mean to me? Success to me is being able to support my clients in a way that I'm helping them move forward, whilst at the same time being able to enjoy my family and to be present for my boys, so we are connected as a family unit and they feel like they can come back to me no matter what they need from me. I'm here. So I'm present with my clients whilst being present for my family. That's what success is for me.
Wonderful. And do you have a quote to finish off?
Oh, a quote. I do actually. Let me just grab it. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so my quote is, when a flower does not bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And that's by Alexander Den Hayer.
Thank you. I haven't ever heard that one before, but it certainly is appropriate to what we've been talking about. And I'd like to thank you for the conversation, where I hope we have managed to change some of the ideas people have about ADHD and turn from a stigma and a struggle to strength and strategy. And I've been really delighted to share this conversation with you and explore how we can empower ourselves and others. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks, Kerryn. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.